after House Speaker Kevin McCarthy directed House committees to open a formal inquiry into the current president on Tuesday. The investigation, Matt Gaetz, already one of the most powerful voices leading the charge.
Joe Biden deserves impeachment for converting the vice presidency into an ATM machine for virtually his entire family.
While no president has ever been removed from office by impeachment, Democrats made the procedure fairly common during the Trump administration. Now they are arguing the impeachment inquiry is illegitimate and a waste of taxpayer dollars, as well as a fishing expedition. And in other headlines, while Speaker McCarthy is making headlines this morning for starting the impeachment process against President Biden, he's also trying to fend off an impeachment of sorts for himself.
Mr. Speaker, you are out of compliance with the agreement that allowed you to assume this role. The path forward for the House of Representatives is to either bring you into immediate total compliance or remove you pursuant to a motion to vacate the chair.
Once again, Representative Matt Gaetz leading the way here, saying that impeaching President Biden may not be enough for McCarthy to keep the Speaker's gavel. Gaetz is even threatening to immediately launch an effort to remove him as Speaker if the California Republican tries to push a continuing resolution to fund the government past September 30th. Many Republicans are calling for immediate spending cuts and a long-term budget. They're also willing to let the government shut down in order to get it. 5 former Memphis police officers who were caught on camera brutally beating and ultimately killing a man are now facing federal civil rights charges in addition to state second-degree murder charges. The 4-count indictment was handed up on Tuesday. Video of the January 7th traffic stop shows the officers punching, kicking, and beating 29-year-old Tyree Nichols with batons as he yells for his mother. The DOJ says the 5 officers used excessive force, failed to advise medical personnel about Nichols' injuries, and then conspired to cover up their misconduct. That's a quick check of your headlines. I'll have more headlines coming up here in just a little bit. But Dr. Gina, I need a little word this morning.
Yeah, well, Terrance, we've got one for you. That's the good news. Today's Bible verse from Jesus Calling says this, and this is eternal life, that they may know you, the only true God, and Jesus Christ, whom you have sent. That's from John 17, verse 3. And I think it's so clear that there's one path to eternal life. And I think focus on that right now in these economic times, these social times, these terrorist times, these border times, that's the ultimate, thing that we're aiming for.
Yeah,
it's important.
Pour into God's word, right? Well, turning now to politics and prosecutions on Capitol Hill, Kevin McCarthy has finally launched an impeachment inquiry into whether or not Joe Biden should be impeached for allegedly profiting while he was serving as vice president from his son Hunter's foreign business ventures.
Meanwhile, Atlanta has become the epicenter of American politics as President Trump is headed to trial, prosecuted by an out-of-control local district attorney in Fulton County, Georgia. But DA Fani Willis is facing investigations and a potential impeachment of her own.
Joining us now with reaction is a man who will ultimately play a huge role in all of these cases, and that is Georgia Congressman Andrew Clyde, and he joins us live now. Welcome to American Sunrise. Good to see you, Congressman.
Well, good morning, and thank you. Great to be on American Sunrise.
So, Congressman, we will get to D.C. in just a moment, but Georgia, sure, is in the news a lot these days. Your state could be the vehicle, if you will, that is used to prosecute and jail President Trump before the election and decide the election for the rest of the country. Is there any way to stop Fani Willis from single-handedly deciding the presidential election?
Well, I think it's very important that the American people decide the presidential election and not Fani Willis. So one of the things that I can do, and we in Congress can do, is we can federally defund that effort. And that's one thing I'm pushing. I've got 2 amendments out there, one to eliminate federal funding on any federal prosecution, so from the federal side, and then eliminate all federal money from any state entity that prosecutes a presidential candidate prior to the November 24 election. So I think that's the strongest thing that Congress has right now is the power of the purse. And when you defund something, you basically make it go away. It eliminates it. And so I think that's the best, the most powerful thing we can do right now. And I think that Fannie Willis's impeachment is going to be up to the Georgia legislature. And if our governor would call a special session, then I think maybe the legislature could deal with that. But from the federal side, defunding her, I think will be very effective in stopping her.
Congressman, let me move to the impeachment inquiry and Kevin McCarthy's role in all of this. He's coming under criticism because he's not taking it to the House for a vote. But hold on for a second. Nancy Pelosi went right to impeachment inquiry without a House vote on Trump. For the first impeachment, it was September 24th when she put out the impeachment inquiry without a House vote. And then 5 weeks later, they had a vote in the full House. What do you expect here, specifically from House Republicans? How long will this impeachment inquiry go on? What's your best guess?
Well, I'll tell you first, I think Nancy Pelosi set a new precedent in the House. We work a lot on precedent. And so here we now have an impeachment, which in my opinion is long overdue, an impeachment inquiry. This is the most corrupt president in the history of our country, at least in my lifetime. And we have seen that he needs to be investigated for his involvement in he and his son's corrupt foreign business practices that has profited his family to the tune of at least, from what we know, $20 million from foreign entities into his family for leveraging taxpayer influence.
And Congressman, Joe Biden is in a lot of hot water, but we're used to Republicans talking a big game and criminals in D.C., like the Bidens, walking free. I'm thinking specifically not just of the international shakedown bribery scheme, wondering if they'll pay, but I'm wondering if Congress is going to do anything about the $6 billion that were allotted for the hostages yesterday, or I'm sorry, on September 11th. Is Congress going to do anything to stop that?
Well, I would love to do something to stop that. I don't know that we actually have the authority to do that, but I will tell you that this president has shown time and time again that he puts America last. You know, paying Iran $6 billion, just like what Obama did, a number of years ago during his administration, is inexcusable and just shows where the president's priorities are. And that is not serving the American people, but it is serving his own interests and serving the interests of foreign entities ahead of Americans. That's an American last policy.
Congressman, we are up against the clock, but real quickly, in a word, do you think that President Biden, because he could be impeached but not removed from office, do you think that Biden will actually be removed from office?
Well, my vote will be to impeach him. I believe the Senate will make that decision. When we lay the evidence out there, I think the American people will make their voices heard. And I think the senators should listen to that. So I think it's certainly a great possibility.
Congressman Andrew Clyde, thank you so much for joining us here on American Sunrise. Please come back.
Thank you. Great to be with you.
All right, up next, a closer look at the case against Biden and what we can expect in the coming prosecution, what it will look like. And later, Marine Corps Lance Corporal Jared Schmitz gives his life for our country as a disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan played out. We all saw it unfold before our very eyes. Now his grieving father is directing the blame for his son's death and the anger of his loss directly at Biden. Their story as American Sunrise continues.
program, you can see that the homes that the Bidens own can't be afforded on a congressional or Senate salary. You also understand that it's not normal for family members to receive millions of dollars from overseas interests. Those things aren't normal. That's not normal to have 20 shell companies. These things are not normal, and it alludes to not only just widespread corruption, but money laundering, if not influence peddling itself. And we also have the vice president at the time on record saying that the prosecutor was fired. Well, son of a the prosecutor was fired, right? Because the prosecutor was going after the company that his son was working on. That's what we have. If you can't see that, if you are that blind, look, I'll turn it over to the attorneys.
People can't see that. They think it's political revenge.
Because you don't report on it.
And that was Congressman Scott Perry responding to journalists, intellectually dense journalists who are not intellectually curious at all, about all of the evidence and all of the smoke around the Biden impeachment inquiry that is coming up. We're going to bring in, of course, the trifecta of West Palm Beach now, Terrance Bates, Gina Loudon, Miranda Khan. Ladies and gentlemen, I've got to say that one of the things I'm going to be watching for is the subpoena of bank records here. Because ultimately, with an impeachment inquiry, that's what you can do. They haven't been able to subpoena bank records, and so we're going to get just more and more information. Like we already had enough in terms of the smoke, but we need to actually dot a couple I's, cross a couple T's, and that's going to be what I'm looking for. What about you, Gina? Why don't we start with you on that?
Well, yeah, that's why I believe it was on the morning show when we had John Solomon on. That's my major question, because I think the bank records are going to be what is going to really lay all of this out for us. I mean, look, there are mounds of evidence. I started compiling it in my cell phone. I can rip through 20 minutes of evidence we have right now on Joe Biden. Not Hunter Biden, Joe Biden, right? The big guy, right? Pops, right? As he's been referred to in many of these texts and things that have come to light. But you know, you're absolutely right. The bank records are going to show it. There's no way they don't exist. When you're splitting money between your children and your grandchildren to try and hide it, something's going to shake loose, and I am waiting to see it.
And to that point, the suspicious activity reports are already out there. Though that information is already there, several committees have looked into that. That is the smoke. The wildfire's out there. The wildfire is out there, and it just is going to come out, or it needs to come out. And I still will always make the argument at this point, an inquiry is just that. It's an investigation. And there have been investigations ongoing. Let's move beyond an inquiry and just go straight to the impeachment, because the information is already out there.
Yeah.
Like I said, the smoke is already billowing. The wildfire is there, so let's just follow the wildfire.
Yeah, I agree. And you brought that up, David, during our interview right before the break with the congressman saying, you know, with all due respect, Nancy Pelosi went straight for the impeachment. So I don't understand what the hesitation
Well,
here
it's
is.
so that they'll have subpoena power, because there's a couple more things they're looking for to make the case to the rest of the members, right? Because remember, there were these 6 members that they needed, right? So now that they have subpoena power, they're hoping, I believe, this is my theory, I don't know if this is true, that they can bring the rest of the members so that they have the votes so that they can bring the impeachment. And remember, I believe it was Congressman Jason Smith from Missouri, my husband actually served with him, and I know him, and we need to get him on the show, who said now that he's seen what they have, he is confident that they can bring impeachment. So you got to get to that point. They got to have their numbers, and that makes sense. But I'm glad they didn't sit on it any longer. And thank God for people like MTG. You can criticize her all you want, but boy, she has been a loud, clanging gong in their ear to do this. Yes, David.
Well, and let's also remember that this is interesting what Kevin McCarthy is up against here politically for a second. Yeah, he should bring the impeachment inquiry, and he's done that, but he's not taking a vote in the House. He's trying to satisfy the right flank by doing the impeachment inquiry, but he's also not taking a vote because he knows that he's got 18 moderates, 18 rhinos, let's call them rhinos, let's not call them moderates, okay? Sorry, I'm getting sucked into the language. 18 rhinos that are literally in districts that Biden Biden won in 2020. These are Republicans in Biden districts. And so he wants to basically shield them from a vote right now because he doesn't want to lose those Republican votes. So this is the political game that McCartney is trying, the dance that he's trying to dabble with here.
Yeah, a lot of pressure being put on Mr. McCarthy. We'll, of course, be talking about this throughout the morning here. But up next, talk about bad timing. Joe Biden pledges to give Iran $6 billion on, get this, 9/11. Can you believe it? Yeah. Well, it's all part of a prisoner swap and a humanitarian aid agreement. Ahead, why so many people see this move as an incredible slap in the face to these people who are mourning the almost 3,000 people killed on 9/11. That story is next as American Sunrise continues.
This news break is brought to you by AMAC, Association of Mature American Citizens.
Sure is a pretty city from a distance, isn't it?
Exactly.
All right, welcome back. Terrance, out of the hot seat now and back over at the news desk. Got a little space from the girls there. We only allow Terrance a few minutes per hour on the couch because he has to keep track of headlines for us. Or we wouldn't know what's happening all over the world, right, Miranda?
Right. It's time now for some headlines sponsored by AMAC.
The Association of Mature American Citizens is the conservative voice for Americans 50 and older. AMAC is fighting for the values that you hold dear. Join today. Together, we can write the course of America.
Miranda and Gina, there is new data out this morning showing where the majority of America's senior citizens are located. Turns out, according to statistics.com, California by far is home to the most senior citizens in the country. Florida and Texas round out the top 3 states with the largest populations of Americans 65 years old and older. Those numbers, by the way, are for 2021. Statista says the COVID-19 pandemic had a disproportionate impact on the population of older adults worldwide. Those numbers largely coincide with the states with the largest populations. However, while Florida has a smaller population than Texas, more seniors call the Sunshine State home. And just like that, doses of the next and allegedly updated COVID-19 booster shots will reportedly be ready to be given out as soon as today. The Food and Drug Administration approved the Pfizer and Moderna shots on Monday. Tuesday, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention followed up by endorsing shots for everyone 6 months old and older. The severity of the pandemic has faded, even though health officials claim that there are still thousands of COVID-related hospitalizations and hundreds of deaths each week. Still, more and more Americans are becoming leery about the continued push for vaccines. The CDC even citing a survey saying that a minority of Americans, just 42%, actually plan to get the jab. And North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un says that Russia has his full backing in its, quote, sacred fight with the West. Those remarks coming this morning during Kim's one-on-one meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow. The duo says all issues are on the table during today's talk, and that includes Russia helping North Korea launch satellites and North Korea supplying Russia with weapons and ammunition to replenish its dwindling stock. The U.S. is keeping a really close eye on today's meeting amid concern about the exchange of weapons and technology between those two communist nations. That's a quick check of your headlines. Now, let's get you over to Mr. Mac, a.k.a. the Mac Daddy, a.k.a. Big Mac. That would be David Brody in Washington, D.C. What's going on, David?
Well, Terrance, great to see you. My Mac case, thanks you so very much. All right, so look, talk about tone deaf in the Biden administration. This is insane what they're doing. On 9/11, they literally announced a prisoner exchange, as you've heard by now, with Iran. Yeah, that's good. Way to go, Biden administration. And in addition, $6 billion going now to Iran. In essence, those assets being no longer frozen, and they'll be able to have access to that money because sanctions by the United States would be lifted. And in essence, the United States says, you know what, we just want you to spend that on humanitarian aid. And Iran is like, yeah, right, we'll spend it however we want. That's our money. Let's get more now with Tara Dahl, former National Deputy Chief of Staff at the National Security Council and a Real America's Voice contributor. That is a mouthful. And this deal, Tara Dahl, is a horrible taste and a bad mouthful for sure for what's going on in America. This is the administration that America is dealing with now. I'm curious to get your initial thoughts.
Yeah, good morning, David. It's good to be with you. This administration continues to demonstrate over and over again that they are on the wrong side on the global war on terrorism. You know, this is following giving $2.3 billion to the Taliban regime since they took over, not including the billions and billions of dollars that they have given in American equipment to the Taliban regime. And instead, I think it's an important point to note that since last September, David, there have been uprisings and protests from women all over Iran. Remember when the 22-year-old Iranian Kurd, she was arrested by the morality police and she was killed in their custody, and it set off a spark wave of opposition against this tyrannical regime. And they have opened fire and have killed 500 of these women, that protesters that include women, includes children. These are pro-American, pro-democratic, pro-freedom protesters. So instead of the Biden regime coming out and giving support to these protesters who are pro-American, they are going to solidify the crackdown on this regime. And Iran is the #1 state sponsor of terrorism. They have the blood of American soldiers on their hands. Over 1,000 soldiers, they say Iran has been responsible for killing in Iraq and Afghanistan. So on 9/11, the day that we're honoring and remembering those lives that have been given in that war on terrorism, this administration is releasing $6 billion to this terrorist regime. So they are completely demonstrating how they are undermining the opposition and Israel, keep in mind, too. You know, Israel just came out and said that that Iran is opening up a base that they want to use as terrorist operations against Israel. And they just said that yesterday and over the weekend.
Right. It's like evidence after evidence. And it's insane what the United States is doing here. And now we have a Biden administration that is trying to somehow rekindle the Iran nuclear deal. And I'm curious to get your take as to what's their end game here? What are they trying to do? What's the nefarious goal here? Because the last time I checked, I'm old enough, sadly, to remember the Iranian hostage crisis in the late 70s under Jimmy Carter. I mean, this has been going on for so long. We know Iran's intentions. They want to destroy Israel, number one, and ultimately they want to destroy America because they see America as the great Satan. Everybody talks about Iran destroying Israel, but ultimately they see this country as really, like I said, the great Satan.
Oh, they're chanting. They chant every day, death to America, death to America, death to Trump. So that is the regime. That's in their constitution. That's their ideology. That's what they believe. They want to see that global Islamic caliphate. That is what in their constitution, the Revolutionary Guard Corps. And keep in mind, this is completely opposite of everything that the Trump administration did. They got out of the Iran nuclear deal. They designated the Revolutionary Guard Corps as foreign terrorist organizations. So the Biden administration is continuing the policies that started under the Obama administration. And instead of supporting the resistance, and keep in mind, Iran has the #1 largest growing church. They have over 1 million Christians right now in Iran. So instead of the Biden administration showing support for the opposition and resistance, which is strong, which is organized, they are going to clamp down and solidify that crackdown. And they're just openly killing. They're hanging. Over hundreds of people right now that are in opposition to this regime are getting hung and being killed. And the Biden administration says nothing.
Yeah, that's such a great point. I've got 30 seconds or so, but I'm curious about, a couple of things. One, Iran, it's interesting, has a very much younger generation now. It's growing. We know social media, as much as it's curbed over there, it just seems like there might be a new potential revolution at some point underway with the younger folks over there. I'm curious to get your take on that part of it, because I think that could play a role here.
Well, that definitely, and that's what the Biden administration should be doing. And that's what the Trump administration did. They were always showing political support for the people of Iran, for the opposition who share American values. That should be the policy. And instead, the Biden administration does the complete opposite, which it's just a continuation of the Obama policies.
Yeah, Tara Dahl, great to see you as always. Great information. Really appreciate your time. Thank you so very much.
Thanks, David.
All right. Look, it's blackmail. It's $6 billion and it's blackmail. That's exactly what this is. As a matter of fact, Senator Chuck Grassley, said those words, and he's right. More on American Sunrise when we come back.
about 4 minutes past the hour. Well, 8:34 to be exact. Better said like that. 8:34 Eastern time. Easy for me to say.
You're so pro, girl.
I am.
You've been in broadcasting forever. I'm just an activist.
Oh, please.
I love it. I love it.
All right, time now to take stock in our health, something that we're all very passionate about. So these days, I'm sorry to say, but more lives are lost to suicide. And just to put this in perspective, more lives are lost to suicide than murder, war, and natural disasters combined. This month, September, is Suicide Prevention Month.
Miranda's very involved in this,
Yes.
thanks, in no small part to your experiences in your life.
Yes.
I think it's important for our audience to know that.
Yeah, so as some of you may or may not know, I lost my sister to suicide in May of 2016. So I'm very passionate about this, as Gina mentioned, and I know you are too when it comes to mental health.
It was my chosen internship for my first master's degree was to do the suicide hotline, and I experienced several suicides working that hotline, and you're never the same.
No, you aren't. And they've come out with this number. You may have heard of it. It's called 988, and it's the crisis phone number for the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. Now, it was set up about a year ago. It's been in the works forever. And there's been a 33% uptick in calls and texts to this lifeline ever since. And that's just because word's finally getting out. But this is sad. So take a look at this headline. Most states have yet to permanently fund 988, despite it being a success, right? So the federal government spent $1 billion to launch the lifeline number. And after the money runs out, well, most states have no plan to foot the bill.
$1 billion to launch? I'm sorry, government can screw up anything. I'm telling you, a private charity could have done this for a fraction of the cost. But then for the states to not accept it after that sort of an expenditure, it just makes no sense to me. And they're sure as heck accepting all the illegals. Sorry, I digress.
No, but it's so true. I mean, especially, right? I mean, it was an epidemic before, but this silent epidemic going all around the world, but especially after COVID. We saw mental illness skyrocket after that because we're not meant to be enclosed and away from human interaction, like real human interaction.
And especially with children and veterans, those are the numbers we've really seen skyrocket. Yeah.
Well, and again, to put this in perspective, our veterans, there are about 22 veterans that die per day because of suicide. That's according to estimates, and that our military are more likely to die by suicide than in actual combat.
And that's higher than ever.
Yeah, well, thanks to Biden's disastrous withdrawal, which we're going to talk more about a little bit later. But 8 states have enacted legislation to sustain 988 through phone fees. But the rest, including many of those rural states where mental health services, I mean, let's just be honest, are in short supply, haven't even planned to provide support. So tomorrow, we're going to have a doctor on the show, Dathan Paterno.
Dr. Dathan Paterno.
Dathan Paterno.
He's my first co-author of my first book. It was called Ladies and Gentlemen.
I'm so excited. And you're going to be doing that interview, and I'm just so happy.
I'm going to be missing you, and we're going to be thinking of you, and of course, your beautiful sister the whole time. But just one word to those, and I don't know why I feel moved to say this right now, to anyone who feels like someone around them may be thinking of suicide, a really great question to ask them, and it's kind of a surprising question, is do you have a plan? And if people have a plan, if they answer that question yes, and they start to tell you about their plan for suicide, then you know it's very real and that you probably need to intervene. And that's where something like this 988 line can come in to be life-saving.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to it because I'm going to be taking a suicide prevention certification course in October.
Oh, wonderful.
But, if you're not familiar with 988 or maybe you feel uncomfortable with it, I actually serve on the board with the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. They have chapters in all 50 states. So I encourage you, it's AFSP. You can go there, check out more resources, and together, we can make a difference.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Everyone knows that the next medical crisis, let's just be honest, is right around the corner, whether it comes in the form of a pandemic or something much more mundane, like just a tick bite. But you and your family, you need to be prepared. And this is where the wellness company comes in. They have this amazing kit that I just love.
Yeah, I know. It's so great because, you open it inside, you're going to have your instruction kit, you're going to have the medications right here. It tells you exactly what you need for what. They have great doctors like Dr. Peter McCullough, who's become rather famous, unfortunately, through the entire COVID disaster because other doctors weren't telling the truth. The Wellness Company and their doctors are medical professionals that you can trust, and their new medical emergency kits are really the gold standard when it comes to keeping you safe and healthy.
Yeah, just give yourself a little peace of mind, right?
Yeah.
Be ready for anything. This medical emergency kit contains an assortment of life-saving medications, including ivermectin, right, and Z-Pak.
See it right here.
Right, the medical emergency kit provides,
right here.
as you mentioned, a bunch of things, and like as you said, there's a guidebook, so it will help walk you through everything that you need to know.
Yeah, absolutely. Rest assured, knowing that you have emergency antibiotics, antivirals, antiparasitics on hand to keep you and your family safe whenever the globalists decide to throw the next thing at us.
Geez.
It's just true.
So here's the website. Take note of this. It is twc.health/voice today. Again, that's twc.health/voice. And you can use the special promo code VOICE because we're all about sharing your voice to get the most important voice on this network. And guess what? You're going to save 10%.
Yeah. Well, Joe Biden has had a bad week, and it's only Wednesday. But first, optics be darn. He went to Vietnam on the eve of 9/11 and then commemorated the worst terror attack on American soil from over 3,400 miles away. The case against his son Hunter continues unabated, and now Joe Biden finds himself facing an impeachment inquiry from the House Republicans. Ouch, Miranda.
Yep, about time.
Joining us with his take on these past few days and their really bad optics is Hogan Gidley. Hogan served as the White House Deputy Press Secretary during the Trump administration. Welcome back, Hogan. Now that the word impeachment is being used all around Washington, D.C., what's happening inside the White House from your memory, thinking about how this might have gone and whatever insight you can lend that we might not realize is probably happening inside the White House?
Well, you can imagine our preparation for impeachment was way different than Joe Biden's because ours was based on a hoax. It was fake. And of course, we had a mainstream media, a legacy media that was going to attack us at every turn. You look at the Biden administration, and what they've got is a real impeachment here. The irony, of course, being Donald Trump was impeached over a phone call with Zelensky asking about Biden corruption. Biden is being impeached, or the inquiry is beginning, about actual corruption the Biden family participated in that Trump was just asking about. So one of these is real, one of these is fake. But the memo has gone out now from the White House to the mainstream media that says, hey, here's why you need to attack Republicans. Here's how you need to do it. And what do you think the media is going to do? Tear it up, throw it in the trash? No. They're going to take notes, and they're going to execute on that order flawlessly from now until they get Joe Biden or attempt to get Joe Biden reelected. The whole thing is a joke. Hopefully, the American people will begin to see just how serious these allegations are against Joe Biden and Hunter Biden, because the Republicans have a tall task here. They have to shift a lot of the the American public's opinion on this matter, because a large portion already believe Hunter and Joe were in cahoots here. 70% or so believe Hunter and Joe Biden were working together, at least to some degree. It's up to the Republicans to drive it home, and I would argue they don't need to do it with the national media or cable news channels. They need to go full on local radio, TV, explain it to the constituents of all of these congressmen in Republican and Democrat districts, and put some heat on those to actually take this seriously and understand what Joe and Hunter have done.
Hogan, you were talking about media strategy. We were talking about this a little earlier with David Brody, and Gina brought up a good point about why not just take this to a vote right away. And that's Kevin McCarthy has been seems like he's strategizing, if you will. We could be wrong, or could just be doing it amid pressure from people like MTG. But what people are speculating is that he doesn't have all the support that he needs, and that the reason why he's doing an inquiry first is so he can get more evidence, like bank statements, which Gina brought up earlier. Well, what is the strategy, you think, going behind the scenes with Kevin McCarthy?
Well, I think it's both for Kevin. but he's obviously trying to be strategic. Look, there are a lot of people on the right side of the Republican aisle saying this guy needs to be going faster, further than he has been going now. But there are some political realities that exist here. And if he doesn't have the votes, it'd be foolish for him to bring it up to watch it get slapped down. That's why I say it's important for those on the right of the GOP to kind of come out and have a systematic messaging kind of campaign at the local level to get people on their side. Because remember, Democrats don't have to do this. They impeached Donald Trump with people in Congress who lied and said they had stone cold evidence of all this collusion. I'm looking at you, Adam Schiff, when they didn't have anything at all. Republicans have a much higher bar to cross because we're not given the mouthpiece of the legacy media like the left is. So we've got to be more strategic about the way in which we attack a Democrat. I think they're doing that now. We want to see it ramped up, of course, but if this inquiry begins to peak somewhere around mid next year, it's going to be a problem politically for Joe Biden, and as I've long said, it's going to be a problem legally as well, because the Biden family has a lot to answer for.
Mm-hmm. The evidence is so deep. I mean, there's so much. I told this audience this morning, I've started compiling it in my cell phone because there's pages and pages and pages of evidence. And yet the Democrats' line on this is that there is no evidence. It's just a ridiculous assertion. There's no evidence at all. To what degree does the inquiry allow the subpoena power to inform the ultimate impeachment? And in your opinion, with the numbers that we need in the House, based on the rhinos, as our own David Brody pointed out this morning, will this be the golden key, this inquiry, for purposes of gaining the impeachment?
It'll help because it'll give the House the ability to garner more evidence. And it'll also help because the mainstream media is going to have to talk about it. From June 8th to July 18th, there were 527 minutes on legacy media dedicated to Donald Trump and indictments. 0 minutes to Joe and Hunter Biden. So no one's talking about it. So the American people don't see it. That's why it has to be local and not national.
Yeah.
But there is a long process that's going to be involved here. And if you can begin to peel this back, and I would argue, Gina, you're right. There are mountains of evidence right now. I mean, this is kind of an open and shut deal that the Democrats can't explain. They long said the laptop itself, for example, you couldn't corroborate it. Well, first of all, the FBI knew it was true for years, right? But second of all, you had Devin Archer and Tony Bobolinsky, both of whom were business partners to Hunter, come out and corroborate the laptop. They were the evidence that corroborated the original evidence. And the media still ignored it. I'm telling you, we've got a long fight ahead, but the Bidens could be in some serious trouble.
Hogan Gidley, thank you so much. Up next, it's our Stay Awake, Not Woke segment. Parents are becoming outraged by woke education policies found in so many schools, but some are fighting back. Find out how as American Sunrise continues.
breaking news from Real America's Voice.
Welcome back, everyone. Terrance Bates along with Miranda Khan, Dr. Gina here. We're back with some breaking news. This is a story that's been making national headlines for a couple of weeks now. There was a gentleman who broke out of a prison in Pennsylvania about 2 weeks ago.
Probably not a gentleman.
Okay, a guy,
You're
an
a gentleman.
inmate, a convict.
You are a gentleman, Terrance.
A convict. He broke out of jail about 2 weeks ago. The good news this morning, he has been arrested, just arrested here within the last 30 minutes or so.
That's some good news.
Yeah, that's very,
really
very good news. He's been holding police at bay and on the run for about 2 weeks. You may have been following this story. There's a picture of the guy.
Yeah.
He actually changed his appearance, cut off his hair, shaved, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
But again, the good news to report this morning, there he is. That's the new appearance. This man is now back in custody and will be back behind bars here in short order.
He was brazen.
Yeah. And
He
again,
really
he was behind bars for murder. So this wasn't just like some criminal who was back behind bars for drugs or something. He killed somebody.
And he was an illegal immigrant. No other media will tell you that. I'll tell you that. He was an illegal immigrant.
And Dr. Gina also said
alien, we
he
might
ain't
also
a gentleman.
call him.
Not a gentleman.
No.
So the good news to report there, again, breaking news, he is now back behind bars.
Thank you for the breaking news update, and we'll continue to follow that with our headlines.
Yes. All right, now it is time for the Stay Awake, Not Woke segment. Will the Stinger Parker?
Nicely done, Pucker. So you know what that means. It's time for Stay Awake, Not Woke, sponsored by our good friends over at Beer Vet Coffee. Gina already has her coffee ready to go. She said today, and I've heard this from a number of people.
Can't get over it.
No BS. She's like, this is like the best coffee.
Yeah, and I just can't drink coffee, especially not black.
But
and I was running, short on time, grabbed the black coffee, put my honey in it, but it didn't have time to go all the way to the refrigerator and grab.
She's all obsessed.
I'm all about the honey. Didn't have time to grab the great milk that Jamie puts in our oat milk that Jamie puts in our refrigerator every day, and so I didn't have, and I drank it black, and I'm like, this is so good. I'm a tea drinker, but it is amazing. You use promo code RAV at Beard Vet Coffee for your 10% off. I'm telling you what, try it. No bitterness at all.
Yeah.
I still can't get over the whole coffee and honey thing, but let's move on.
I'm telling you.
We'll move on to our woke story of the day. As parents are becoming increasingly incensed by woke education policies, get this, ladies, many of them are actually pulling the plug on public schools and opting for homeschooling. Dr. Gina, I'm going to get to you momentarily.
That's not crazy.
It's not crazy.
They're not wrong.
So listen to this. In Texas, nearly 30,000 students between 7th and 12th grades have actually been withdrawn from public schools this year, and all of this in favor of homeschooling, similar to what Dr. Gina has done. That number, by the way, was previously only matched during the COVID peak from 2020 to 2021. Studies have found that the main reasons parents are actually choosing to homeschool is due to their kids' quote concerns about safety, parental involvement, and school environment. Parents also say their desire to provide moral instruction is a primary reason. Dr. Gina, now you can speak up. You are a homeschooling parent.
Yes, I am.
Were those some of the reasons that led to you making that decision?
Check. Yes, I have been homeschooling for about 20 years.
Okay.
And those are the exact reasons. And COVID re-emphasized to me, and before that I used to say it's not for everyone. Get your kids out of public schools, and if you can't afford a good private school, I would say religious private school, and not all of them are good, then absolutely bring your kids home. There are more than 2,000 curricula out there for you to choose from. They do the work for you. Take time researching. DM me anywhere at Real Dr. Gina. If you have questions, I'm happy to help, because this is critical to your children's future. My one friend said to me, hold on to their hearts and you have everything. This is how you hold on to their hearts.
I'm just going to respond as a parent of a public school kid and a husband to a public school teacher. It starts at home. Don't let your school raise your kids. You raise your kids at home. I'm just going to leave it there. Dr. Gina, go ahead.
You leave it there. Up next, time for our moment of faith, cleaning out the temples. Jesus did it, but is there a parallel to draining the swamp that you all are so engaged in? Well, there's an interesting comparison coming up next as American Sunrise continues.
South Florida. Take me there now. All right, welcome back to American Sunrise. So Jesus cleaned out the temple. You know about that from the Bible. Donald Trump is draining the swamp. Wait a minute, is there a parallel here? Joining me now is the author of the new book, The Duke of D.C., Jim Mosley. Jim, good to see you, sir. Well, take it away because, and we'll get a little bit to your book in a moment, but this is an interesting parallel that you've got going here. Explain it to us.
Well, yeah, I was thinking about what's going on with the Biden impeachment query and how that how that tells us we really do have to drain the swamp. Now, when you look at Jesus, nobody can really be compared to Jesus, but he did things that are models for things that we should do. And I think about we had Trump for a first term starting to drain this swamp. And this impeachment inquiry shows how bad it really is. Well, when you think about it, Jesus didn't cleanse the temple just one time. He cleansed it the first time, the Gospel of John tells us, in the first Passover of his ministry, AD 30. But then if you look at Mark 21 and Luke 19, he cleansed the temple a second time on Palm Sunday. And if you look at Mark 11, he cleansed it a third time on the Monday after Palm Sunday. That's kind of like a parallel. We need Trump in for a second term to finish that job. But think about what other parallels there are. Why did Jesus have to do this? Well, the temple was run by the house of Annas, the corrupt high priest who had been thrown out of his office, and his son Joseph Caiaphas was running the high priesthood. They ran the animal sacrifice business in the temple. They were making all the money. Joseph Caiaphas was like his Hunter Biden. And so they were just skimming Yeah, they were skinning and cheating in their office and making tons of money. And when Jesus said, you know, you've turned my house into a house of my father's house into a house of trade, that's what's happening in D.C. Now, when Jesus cleansed the temple that first time, the Jews recorded in the Talmud, Yoma 3b, that for 40 years after that date, the sacrifice for the atonement of Israel was never accepted by God. And what happened 40 years after that? The Romans destroyed the temple. Jesus was saying, it's over. The Messiah is here. And no wonder they got so mad at him.
Yeah, so I got 20 seconds or so, but you're saying that what could come in the future, I mean, there's a part two to this story. It's not just a parallel now with draining the swamp and the temple, but the ruins or what could happen next, it could be a potential parallel as well.
It was a new birth of freedom in Christ, and that's what we can hope for, is a revival and preservation of the American dream. We got to just get Donald Trump in for a second term.
Yeah, Jim Mosley, great to have you on the show. His book is The Duke of D.C. It is a great read. Laura Trump has endorsed it. I've endorsed it. You've got to check it out. It is MAGA-centric, and there's Donald Trump references in it, even though Donald Trump's name is never mentioned, but you'll get the parallels for sure. All right, we're back for our second hour of American Sunrise when we come back.
second hour of American Sunrise, the great Bidenomics economy. Really? Are you hurting? Is your wallet empty? If so, you are not alone. We've got the story.
Hiding. If you guessed receipts for private plane trips, well, you would be correct. Now, a watchdog group is suing.
And anger erupts from a father whose son made the ultimate sacrifice for our country in Afghanistan and now feels not only slighted but disgusted by Joe Biden.
We have seen what's going on in your family. And even worse, we've seen how you've been treating us as Gold Star families. And there couldn't be anything more disgusting and cowardly than the way you have treated us. You are a disgrace to this nation. You have no business having ultimate command over our military, and I regret not saying that to your face when I had the opportunity in Dover.
We've got your back as you start your day.
Articulating what the majority of Americans feel today, and I really appreciate that you do.
Y'all tell the truth.
You guys are our voice.
Watch every morning while getting ready for work.
Good morning, everybody. It's hour 2 of American Sunrise. We could not be happier to see you, and we could not be happier also
to have Terrance Bates,
we get to
T-Bates, the terrific Terrance in the house.
Thank you. Guys, you guys have been wonderful. Thank you so much for being so welcoming. It's been so great to be here with you. You guys get me for 2 more days.
I know. We're so happy.
And while we're happy, let's not forget about David Brody stuck in the swamp. David, we love you.
Oh, I love you all. It's such a love fest down there. Right now, I've got a love fest with my makeup. I am Mr. Mac.
Mr. Mac.
And
Mac Daddy.
It is a second hour. It's a second hour of American Sunrise, so don't worry. I am ready to go. Terrance Bates, you've got headlines. You're ready to go. Let's get it going.
Absolutely. Let's start with this much anticipated impeachment inquiry against President Biden that is now underway after House Speaker Kevin McCarthy directed House committees to open a formal inquiry into the current president. All of this happening on Tuesday. The investigation will focus on Hunter Biden's business dealings in Ukraine. Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz, already one of the most powerful voices leading the charge. Well, Matt Gaetz basically saying that President Biden is a criminal. Those are the allegations that he is making, and he is pushing for an inquiry and in full weight of an investigation from Congress. While no president has ever been removed from office by impeachment, Democrats made the procedure fairly common during the Trump administration, and now they're arguing that the impeachment inquiry against Joe Biden is illegitimate, a waste of taxpayer dollars, and a, quote, fishing expedition. The world is watching as North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un and Russian President Vladimir Putin are meeting in Moscow as we speak. Kim says Russia has his full backing in its, quote, sacred fight with the West. The duo says all issues are on the table during today's talks. The U.S. is most closely watching talks about Russia helping North Korea launch satellites, and North Korea in turn supplying Russia with weapons and ammunition to replenish its dwindling stock following the war in Ukraine. Speaking through an interpreter earlier this morning, Kim telling Putin, quote, "We will always support the decisions of President Putin and the Russian leadership, and we will be together in the fight against imperialism." It has been a deadly and disturbing year of natural disasters. Most recently, rescuers found more than 2,000 bodies in the wreckage of a flooded Libyan city after floodwaters broke dams and washed away entire neighborhoods there. And just into our news within the last hour, officials are now confirming that the overall death toll has surpassed 5,100 people. The United Nations Migration Agency says at least 30,000 people are displaced. In the meantime, the number of dead from Friday's earthquake in Morocco is now up to more than 2,900 people. The government there saying that most of the dead were buried under rubble of collapsed buildings. An estimated 300,000 people have lost their lives. That's a quick check of your headlines. I'll have more economic headlines coming up here in just a little while. Miranda?
Terrance. All right, so check out this headline. It is sombering. Gold Star dad calls out Biden as, quote, disgrace to this nation. I'm done biting my tongue.
Can you imagine?
No, I don't think any of us can. Jared Schmitz was one of the 13 U.S. service members killed by a suicide bomber at Hamid Karzai International Airport as U.S. troops began their disastrous pullout from Afghanistan on August 26, 2021. At least 170 Afghan civilians also died from that blast.
Mark Schmitz, who is Jared's father, still agonizes over unanswered questions about the Biden regime's decisions leading up to his son's death. Mark says that Joe Biden and his administration have avoided any accountability for the role they played in the 2021 attack.
Mr. Schmitz accuses the Biden administration of flat out lying about all the details surrounding the events leading up to Jared's death to avoid public shaming. He also said that he hasn't had any closure on how Jared actually died that day. Take a look.
Well, I stood there on the tarmac watching you check your watch over and over again. All I wanted to do was shout out, it's 2:30. But out of respect to the other grieving families, I bit my tongue once again. Well, as you could probably tell by now, I'm done biting my tongue.
Mr. Mark Schmitz joins us live now. Sir, welcome. And on behalf of all of us here, we are so sorry for your loss. And thank you also for standing up and having the courage to stand up to the Biden administration and no longer biting your tongue.
Yeah.
Good morning, and thank you.
I just want to start with asking you, you've been outspoken. I've seen you numerous times. I've quoted you on this program many times. And we appreciate it takes a special kind of a courage. And I realize that everyone grieves in their own way. But what kind of support do you have? I know you have none from the Biden regime, but from the other families, are most of them, are you guys holding each other up? How is this working out?
Yeah, we communicate weekly with each other. The vast majority of us do anyway. It's not 100% unity across the board with all 13 families, but for the most part, we all are in the same mindset that things have got to change. We're most concerned with, we know that our kids can't be brought back, but we're most concerned with our active military that are out there. And under this leadership, it's just terrifying. I don't think Biden has any right being the ultimate commander of our military. I think right now, while he's in office, our military needs to make these decisions, and things would have been handled a heck of a lot differently. And I'm sure my son would be coming home to visit us on his next leave versus us having to speak to his picture behind me. That's what I talk to every morning and every night. I say good morning and good night to my son, and that's all I have left.
If you could speak to Joe Biden right now, what would you say to him?
Well, I'd probably end up in jail, but I would repeat pretty much everything I said in my speech. I spent a month writing that. Then I rewrote it 10, 11 more times. He's a screw up.
Stood there on the tarmac.
He has messed things up over there. It's obvious that his entire career, his foreign policies have been off the mark, nonstop, 100% accuracy. You can count on the fact that he's going to miss the mark, and he did it big time this time. And by closing Bagram back on July 1st, that was the biggest lead domino, as I've said before, that caused the rest of the dominoes to collapse. And now you've got dead civilians, U.S. civilians. You've got U.S. civilians left behind. You've got 13 service members killed. You've got 170 Afghans killed, which I'm sure some of those were U.S. citizens. And this president is such a coward, he won't even mention their names publicly. It's just, he's not a leader. He's an absolute disgrace.
Yeah, and that was going to be my question, because you've really never had any sort of reach out from him since that infamous day where your son's flag-draped coffin was presented while Joe Biden was checking his watch. Do you think that you will have any reach out from anyone in this administration? And piggybacking on that question as well, what is your hope for change? I mean, this can't be the way that our troops are brought home. What's our hope for change?
I'm sorry, I've missed the first part of that question. I apologize.
Just have you yet heard from anyone from the Biden administration?
They reached out early on asking if I wanted any correspondence from the White House. I said, what do you mean? And they said, well, from the president's office. This was 2 weeks after Dover. And I said at that point, absolutely not. You know, he had his opportunity face to face and blew it. And at this point, 2 years has gone by. He can't muster up enough courage to even mention my son's name or any of the other 12 for that matter. As far as I'm concerned, he doesn't have the right to speak his name anymore. And I don't have any interest in talking with their office. I've seen what they're capable of. I've seen what they do. They are constantly trying to cover their tracks. There are some new insight that's come out that we hope that some of the other snipers in the tower that were there will speak out. But when General McKenzie conducted an interview sometime earlier last week, he had mentioned that there was absolutely no intelligence on the description of this bomber. So if you read between the lines, what he's doing is he's calling our hero, Tyler Vargas Andrews, the sniper, a flat-out liar. And now they're crossing lines and gloves are coming off. If they want to go toe-to-toe, we're ready to go. I'm just absolutely appalled that they would disgrace this young warrior who's given up an arm and a leg, and God only knows how much PTSD he's going to suffer for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
And to call him a liar is just unforgivable. So,
well, Mark, we thank you for your stand. We thank you for your courage. We thank you for taking these injustices that your family has been served, certainly this major loss, and turning it into action to try to save the rest of our children. I have 3 boys approaching military age, and when I watch these military-aged men by the thousands that our border correspondents are capturing every day coming across our border, not knowing, who they are exactly and what's going to happen next in terms of our military, I have to tell you, it's the face of you and your son and the others that cross my mind, and other Gold Star parents. So we thank you. We are praying for you. I want you to know this is a praying audience in a big way. We are praying for you, and just could not appreciate you more. This, of course, Mark Schmitz, Gold Star father of Lance Corporal Jared Schmitz. Thank you again. More American Sunrise coming up. Back in a moment. unleash a little bit of your sentiment and your anger where it should be directed, this segment is sponsored by Sea of Mud, seaofmud.com. You can use promo code RAV1776. It gives you 15% off. This is a rural American patriotic apparel company. Everything is American made. And they have a lot more than t-shirts. They have knives, drinkware, swimwear, and they allow you to express the anger and the absolute righteous indignation that you have about what is happening in our country right now.
Well said. Our swamp story today, the swamp is greater than the sum of its parts. And Hunter Biden isn't the only part of the White House that likes to fly private. So check out this headline. What is Secretary Pete Buttigieg hiding? Well, his receipts for the FAA planes that he flew on your dime, while a watchdog group claims that he could have been flying commercial like we all do. So they're suing.
Now, Transportation Department officials are stonewalling the delivery of the documents requested, shocker, in the lawsuit that challenges Buttigieg's wasting of taxpayer money.
I just love that. Everyone's struggling to pay bills right now, and he's doing this.
Yeah.
All right. So the FAA has reportedly found 32 records that comply with the request, but it claims it needs 3 more months to review and produce them.
A director of the watchdog group said, quote, "This raises serious concerns about the political meddling this administration is willing to engage in to hide the truth from the public." David, I thought this is the most transparent administration ever. That's what the corporate media says all the time. That's what Joe Biden says when he talks about himself 90% of the time.
Yeah, this is the most stonewalling administration ever. I mean, this is exactly what's going on. And just real quick on the Buttigieg situation. So many of these trips that he took to go to, by the way, wait for it, battleground states politically. And that's also in there. And when he met with folks, these are folks that he could have easily met with in D.C. They could have come to D.C. and met him in his nice, cozy couch and office and all of that. Why is he taking a plane, an FAA plane, federal government plane, to these places when they could have easily just come to D.C.? But this is part of that government waste and abuse that's been going on for a very long time, Terrance.
You know what? I'm going to challenge Secretary Buttigieg to take a train to East Palestine. How about that?
Yeah.
Take a train
there
to
you
East
go.
Palestine.
That's where he needs to be.
And take a train.
Yeah.
Take a train, Pete.
Yeah, although just remember last time when he went, they messed up and they had to redo everything. You guys remember that?
Yes.
And he was kind of overseeing that, so he wasted money and he was wearing dress shoes and it was just weird. But yeah, it'd be nice if they did anything for the people of East Palestine.
It would be really nice.
Always a thing, right? Coming up, how hard has Bidenomics hit your wallet? Well, if you're saying hard, you are not alone. We've got the figures. And then later, the once great city of New York is now a shadow of its glittering self. Find out why. There's a new report ahead here on American Sunrise.
back, everybody. Hey, just real quick, I want to say, Terrance, something that came to my attention in the chat. Liberty Lady asked this question, and I thought it was important. T. Bates, I know you're a journalist, but being a military brat, do you worry that Biden has the nuclear code?
The short answer is yes. The expanded answer, and I wrote this in the chat, I worry that any man or woman, I don't care who it is, has that sort of destructive and deadly power at his or her fingertips.
Yeah, but especially this
him.
One. Yeah, we're both like
I said, the short answer, yes. The broader answer, anybody.
Yeah.
Well, in case you guys didn't know, Bidenomics, it is very successful.
Right, they told us so.
Yeah, it's very successful at causing real Americans like yourself to struggle. Terrance, it's no wonder why people all across America do not trust Biden on economic issues. What are they thinking?
Yeah, just look down the egg aisle, right?
Yeah.
New numbers from the U.S. Census Bureau, though, that put Bidenomics into new perspective this morning. The U.S. poverty rate rose from 7.8% in 2021 to 11.5% last year. The supplemental poverty rate, which basically takes into account government support like stimulus checks, actually spiked to 12.4%. Putting those numbers into real perspective, poverty among children more than doubled. The increases followed 2 years of historically large declines in poverty. In fact, those declines were largely credited with an expansion of safety net programs that were created during the pandemic. Median income adjusted for inflation also fell 2.3% to just $74,580 a year. David, I think the simple way to say that is there are economically tough times happening across the country right now.
Yes, and that would be the understatement of the year and the understatement of American Sunrise this morning. So thank you, Terrance Bates, for giving us that perspective for sure. Speaking about devastating, how about New York and what's happened to New York City specifically? Of course, we know about 9/11 and the somber events of this past Monday. And of course, we know about the devastation from those attacks. But what about New York City specifically? Let's get more with David Zier, the host of Breaking Point here on Real America's Voice. He's a New Yorker and has seen the devastation take not just a foothold, it's a stranglehold on New York. David, what is it like there compared to past years? Because I'm from New York, Upper West Side, the mean streets of the latte-sipping Upper West Side of New York. And look, I'm not going back. I'm not going back. This stuff, it's insane what the city's become. And I'll give you some of my stories, but I'm curious to get yours.
Well, I'm going to get some coffee here in New York. But,
yeah,
like the New York Times today has an article about trash cans of the future. Instead of the devastating unvetted wave of hundreds of thousands of illegals coming to New York City, and the fact that New York will become a trash can of, maybe even foreign threats. The Nation today is reporting or has an article that, it's Ellis Island all over again. No, this is unvetted people, and 9/11 families don't feel the same way. My good friend John Owens, who lost his brother Pete, I interviewed him again at Ground Zero the other day. They're worried about attacks. Remember, most of the attacks that happened after 9/11 were lone wolf, ISIS-inspired attacks, and the list goes on. Outside of the JFK gas pipeline attack that was foiled by the Joint Terrorism Task Force, the Fort Dix massacre plot, the Times Square bomber who put the fuse in backwards was one man in a Pathfinder. Could have killed hundreds of people in Times Square if it wasn't to the heroic actions of New York Mounted Police Officer Wayne Radigan in 2010. And in 2017, the 3 bombs that exploded, the pressure cooker bombs in Jersey, in New York City, in Chelsea, throwing a dumpster 650 feet down the road, wounding and injuring people. And then you have the West Side Highway attacks that happened in 2017 on Halloween. A single guy rode down the bike path of West Side Highway at 60 miles an hour and killed 8 people. It goes on and on. The foiled attempts or the unsuccessful attempt of the subway bomber. But there's a new secret program that I wanted to tell you about in the United States that's going on, flying illegals directly into our airports, if you want to get into that.
Yeah, let's do that. I got about a minute or so go ahead, because you say illegals makes you think of the homeless problem. I know homelessness is up 17% in New York, and that's just really scratching the surface. Tell me a little bit about that. I got about a minute or so.
Well, I spoke to Todd Bensman the other day, and he's telling me that the biggest state secret in the country right now is this alternate program from the CBP One app that's flying people in from Venezuela, from Haiti, from Nicaragua, and Cuba. And you can enjoy an in-flight movie now, make a reservation on an airliner, and enjoy a couple of vodkas and land at airports across the United States. And he has a lawsuit and a FOIA in to find out the real numbers, but he said it's going to be devastating. And he also says that buckle up, because until 2025, at a minimum, we are going to be overrun, and this is going to be the biggest story of our time.
David Zier, your brain is an encyclopedia, and I would like at least 1/3 of it, if I can, on just one given day. That's all I'm asking for. So I appreciate you. Thanks for being here.
Well, getting the word out.
Breaking Point. The host of Breaking Point. By the way, as it relates to New York, 70% of New Yorkers, latest poll, 70% of New Yorkers think they're going to be the victim of a crime in the city. That's the state of New York today. And I grew up in New York in the 70s, son of Sam 70s. And this stuff today is out of control, even compared to the 70s, believe it or not. All right, time for the opening bell. Economic headlines, Terrance Bates, all that jazz. Sponsored by AMAC.
The Association of Mature American Citizens is the conservative voice for Americans 50 and older. AMAC is fighting for the values that you hold dear. Join today. Together, we can write the course of America.
Well, the markets are just about to open, and I'm looking right now, the NASDAQ, S&P 500, all of the markets right now in the red. That's not a good sign, but again, things could change. It is still early on in trading. You can see the folks getting ready, and the markets will open at some point in time here. The bell will ring, and the trading of money will go. In the meantime, Google investors are keeping a close eye on the tech giant's stock price this morning, as the company is at the center of the biggest U.S. antitrust trial in a quarter century. At issue is whether the company created a pseudo-monopoly of the internet search engine market by locking out its competitors. The Justice Department's lead attorney in the case argues, and I'm quoting here, "This case is about the future of the internet and whether Google's search engine will ever face meaningful competition." The trial is expected to last about 10 weeks. Google says it faces a wide range of competition despite having a 90% share of the internet search market. The company's contracts have also made its search engine the default browser on phones and other devices. Well, Vladimir Putin called the U.S. dollar's drop in dominance, quote, objective and irreversible during the recent BRICS summit in South Africa. This as Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa formally agreed to use local currencies instead of the U.S. dollar. It's the first shoe to fall. As demand for the dollar weakens, the buying power of the dollar also weakens, and that is why the Birch Gold Group is busier than ever these days. Investors and savers are really looking to harness the power of physical gold that's held in a tax-sheltered IRA. You can text the word America to the number 989898 for your free information kit on gold. With thousands of happily satisfied customers, an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau, as well as countless 5-star reviews, you can count on the Birch Gold Group to help you navigate transitioning an existing IRA or 401k into an IRA in gold. Yes, that's a thing. As the U.S. dollar continues to receive pressure from foreign countries, digital currency, and central banks, you may want to arm yourself with information on how to protect your savings, and you can do so, again, simply by texting the word America to the number 989898 and claim your free information kit on gold from the Birch Gold Group. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, there is a whole lot of Biden going on. 2024 is getting saucy, and there's a whole lot of Biden going on in that as well, and not in a good way. Yeah, he's all up in the sauce. We'll tell you why the president is sort of stuck in the sauce, in fact. That's next, as American Sunrise continues.
It's Southern at its finest. It's red, white, and blue. You gotta get out and try it. Red State Barbecue. Red State Barbecue.
Hey, this is all you should see. We're all galloping here because we get all excited.
I really want to break into rawhide at that point.
It feels like a rawhide or a Gunsmoke thing, right? Yeah. We're telling our age, or at least I'm telling mine, because she's 25.
You can watch this very currently. We just had a conversation about that in the chat. You can watch this very currently, all of these old things that will remind you of Red State Barbecue on TV. You know,
there are these old. Yeah, my mom's at my house now watching Gunsmoke, probably. So yeah,
she should be watching us.
She should be watching us. All right, thank you so much for watching American Sunrise. Speaking of watching, of course, this segment is sponsored by Red State Barbecue, redstatebarbecue.com. Use that promo code RAB10 for 10% off. And we can't talk enough about this apple bourbon.
Yes.
No, tell us. You've got a little story.
All right, so I'll keep this brief. I was at a barbecue probably about 2 weeks ago now. I was drafted into barbecuing, and I took all of the Red State barbecue sauces I had and was putting them on meat and offering them to people. And a good friend of mine loved this apple bourbon. He was like, dude, I love this so much, and he ordered it on the spot.
On the spot. And you can do that too. You can do that right now, as a matter of fact. And you know they have a million flavors. Every region of barbecue you could possibly want, from the vinegars to the mustards to the red sauces to the spices, etc., etc. RedStateBarbecue.com. That's where you go. Promo code RAV10 for your 10% off. You know, we were always Missouri barbecue people. I'm just going to say, because I'm from Missouri. We like the Missouri barbecue. But I brought home some of these Red State barbecues, and just last night Lily made an orange chicken with the apple bourbon sauce. Really? She mixed in like an orange marmalade and some like Lipton dried onion soup, and that.
And you didn't invite me over.
You are always welcome, girl. Mi casa, su casa.
I'm in town visiting. I want an invitation.
Yeah,
you're always welcome too.
All right, let's talk about what's getting saucy. So the state of Democratic Party, and let's just be honest, and their hold on the White House. Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, has finally pulled the trigger and delivered something that, let's just be honest, MAGA Republicans have been begging for since day one of Joe Biden's residency of the White House. And that is, of course, to ask for an impeachment inquiry into Joe Biden.
These are allegations of abuse of power, obstruction, and corruption. And they warrant further investigation by the House of Representatives. That's why today I am directing our House committee to open a formal impeachment inquiry into President Joe Biden.
Now, the impeachment inquiry hasn't even begun, but that isn't stopping corporate media outlets from speculating who is likely to fill Joe's shoes if he doesn't, for some reason, finish his term. Take a look at this article from The Hill, for example. The election is more than 400 days away, but it's already laying out its top 5 alternatives to Joe. And take a look at this list and tell us what you think. Coming in at number 1, Kamala Harris.
Cackle, cackle, cackle.
Oh, here we go.
Oh, artificial intelligence. That's what AI is.
You know what? I mean, so she's next in line.
I mean, yes. That's obvious.
That's the obvious part. Do I think there would be an uprising if, in fact, she was seriously being considered? Absolutely. I think even Democrats, because this is for Democrats, this is about winning. It's not about a candidate. It's about winning. And I don't believe that Democrats believe that she can win.
The one thing that is interesting is how much is Kamala Harris really willing to sell her soul? Because she is from the area where Democrat money is very controlled by Nancy Pelosi, and there is a lot of Democrat money there that has her back. That's why my husband called Kamala Harris being chosen as Veep way back when no one was talking about her, because just following the money like we know how to do. So if she were willing to sell her soul to the powers that are controlling the puppet Joe Biden right now, for example, the Obamas of the world, and if Michelle Obama doesn't want it, I could see this happening. But as you know, Miranda, she's not the only one on the list.
She is not the only one on the list. Real quickly, before I go to number 2, David, your reaction again to that.
Well, she's a downgrade, and that's saying something if you're a downgrade from Biden. But let me just say, the reason she's a downgrade simply is because Democrats really don't like her at all. When I say like her, I mean, at least with Biden, they feel sorry for him. I'm talking about Democrats. Democrats at least feel sorry for him a little bit. They realize he's out of touch. But, 46 years in the Senate, there's a bit of a, not a love fest, but they kind of respect him. I know. I'm talking about Democrats here, not overall Americans. But Kamala, literally the party does not want her to run. But if she did, she could go around in a nice bright yellow school bus, and maybe that'll be the way she does
well
it.
Played.
Yeah, I
well
said
played.
it. Thank you.
Love to know, again, while we're going through this list, what those of you at home think, because again, you're the most important voice on this network. So you can join us maybe on Getter or Rumble, whatever social media platform you choose, and let us know what you think about this list. So number 2, California Governor Gavin Newsom showing up on this list. Now, as you guys all know, he did an interview with Chuck Todd over the weekend. He was asked if he would run. He said absolutely not. No desire to run. He supports Joe Biden, yada, yada, yada. But I'm not really buying it, Terrance, because we're here in the state of Florida, and he ran an ad in Florida. Now, why would the governor of California run a political ad in Florida if he had zero intentions of running?
Because he'll publicly say absolutely he's not considering it. Privately, he's absolutely considering it. David Brody, I yield to you, though, my friend.
That is exactly right. If he says one thing, it's going to be the opposite. I don't think there's any question about it. And let's also remember, this is a man that was put on the recall ballot. I mean, they tried to recall him, and this is the best the Democrats have. They've got Kamala Harris as number 1 and a recall candidate as number 2. There you go. Back to you in West Palm Beach. DC out.
Exactly.
Mic drop.
Mic drop, right. I don't know if there's much more we can say after that, but there's another one on this list.
Right, and that will be Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, Mayor Pete as they call him. Randy Pooh, what do you think? Mayor Pete, does he even have a shot?
I don't even
by
know.
By plane, train, or automobile?
Randy Pooh?
That's my nickname for her, Randy Pooh.
That's kind of sweet.
I got one for you, too.
No, I think Pothole Pete is...
Speaking of nicknames.
Speaking of nicknames. I think... I don't even know how he made this list, because I think he has been disastrous. He has been a train wreck, and yes, pun intended there. We've had one disaster after another, and what is he doing? He's jet setting from, as David Brody pointed out, to battleground states on your dime.
Yeah.
I just don't even know how he made it on the list. No, I think he is...
And his handling of East Palestine. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, this shows desperation. Like the fact that there's even this list, it seems to me that this is clear desperation on the part of Democrats.
It's like a clown car. They just keep getting out, and it keeps getting more ridiculous.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, well, what do you guys think of Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer? She made the list as well. Is she the next big rising star who could replace Biden? I don't know. Is she the least horrific? I don't know. Actually, I can't even say that. She's so horrific. But I mean, she's maybe not as
yeah, can she carry her own state?
Well, I think that's probably what they're hoping.
Oh my God, that looks like me in the back. I promise it's not.
It does kind of look like you.
I promise it's not.
But I mean, she's embarrassing. She's just as embarrassing in a million ways. Maybe can actually, express a sentence, show up, and fake it better than some of the others. I don't know.
David, what do you think?
Well, Gretchen Whitmer was in this really tough race in Michigan, number 1, against, of course, Tudor Dixon. But beyond all of that, I mean, what's her mantra going to be? We lock down Michigan, let's lock down America.
Right.
I mean, really, this is the Queen Whitmer, basically, is what she was during COVID. So anyhow, the point simply is that they have no bench.
Yeah.
The Democrats literally have no bench. I think that's the whole point of this list. I'm glad the list is out so everybody can see that it's Biden or bust, and that is sad. That is sad if Biden, if it's Biden or bust.
Miranda, you asked for responses, and did we get them? RD 518, that's my buddy from North Carolina, by the way, writing, Buttigieg can't run the transportation department, let alone the country. The first part, okay, but yeah, we get the point.
Yeah, and please weigh in, but here's another name that came up on this list. Maybe it's a surprise, maybe it's not, but what about Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, a.k.a.
Oh, my gosh,
AOC.
please.
I know. Oh, Eve, I know. I can hear you already, David. Go for it, because I don't get it.
Okay. No, look. Oh, my gosh. She is a piece of work. Look, she actually, I believe, has just decided she's going to run for another term in Congress. I believe she's either very close to making that announcement. There was talk about her running for the U.S. Senate. But she's just going to stay in the Bronx and be, AOC from the block in the Bronx, or whatever she is, Jenny in the block, whatever it is. No, really? I'm sorry. I know I have the MAC makeup next to me, but I really need medication next to me, because I can't deal with these stories anymore. I'm dwindling. I'm literally dwindling.
Oh, you're doing all right. I know. It's going to be all right. It's going to be all right.
Where's Michelle Obama? Why is she not on this list?
Well, that's a good question. So that was my next question I was going to ask you. Is there anybody on this that's not on this list that you would put on this list?
You said your husband called Michelle Obama, correct?
Yeah. My husband definitely thinks that Michelle Obama, and he's a great political projector. He predicted, as I said, Kamala Harris being VP when no one was talking about it, and he has thought Michelle Obama for a long time. And I mean, look, she's been so quiet. She's had no, other than the media just swooning over her. What do you ever even see of Michelle Obama? She makes no policy statements ever. When's the last time you heard Michelle Obama make a policy statement?
No, remember, too, Obama himself didn't quickly endorse his own vice president. Really, the only thing that she's kind of remembered for, I would say, was trying to dictate what kind of food your kids could have in school. Yeah.
Right.
Remember that?
But that's the last time she commented on anything that required an opinion. She doesn't. She goes and she dances on shows, and she, makes pretty speeches at graduations and graces the covers of magazines that should have featured Trump women who are all gorgeous fashion models. But so what has she done or said? My point is, there's no dirt on her. There's nothing to say about her aside from the very obvious, which I'm sure you all are filling the chat with right now.
I know they are. You got that going.
They'll just say you're a conspiracy theorist for that. In her own vernacular, she has said nothing to oppose. And that's my point, is that she makes an attractive candidate for Democrats because there's nothing you can say about her that sounds rational in policy.
All right, guys, we need to wrap this up. But you heard, again, that top 5 list. You thought Michelle Obama should be on there. Yeah. Curious what you think about this list. If there's somebody else you would add, let us know. Again, join us on Getter or Rumble or any of the social media platforms and share your voice with us. All right, just ahead, a story that is simply beautiful. Oh, I can't wait. Rescuers moved 5,000 pounds of concrete to rescue a kitten who was stuck in a storm drain. You definitely want to see this. And stop whatever you're doing. Hold on. Don't head out that door just yet. You're going to want to see this.
It's a baby.
It's so lovely.
Awesome, guys.
Freedom-loving patriots are falling in love with America's barbecue sauce, Red State Barbecue. Red State's 8 different sauces are perfect for whatever sparks your barbecue palate. Visit redstatebbq.com. That's redstatebbq.com and use promo code RAV10 for 10% off.
Red State Barbecue.
Let's spill some tea.
Welcome back to American Sunrise. You're not going to want to miss this. This segment, of course, sponsored by Artillery Tea Company. ArtilleryTCO.com is the website to check out. Use that promo code RAV, and guess what? You're going to save yourself 10%.
It's all natural. It's whole leaf. It's chemical free. Each bag can be used 2 times. And so why wouldn't you get it?
Yeah, well, and here's the other thing. It's family and veteran owned. And a portion of your purchase actually goes to help veteran and first responder charities.
ArtilleryTCO.com, promo code RAB for 10% off.
Well, in the cup today, far-left third-party presidential candidate Cornel West throwing some Democratic shade this morning. In fact, he's throwing the Democratic Party under the bus when he claimed that it doesn't put Americans' needs first. Telling the truth for a lot of people.
Right? West said in a recent interview that the Democratic Party is, quote, beyond redemption regarding seriously speaking to the needs of poor and working people. Duh.
Well, they've used them. They've used them well, too, very effectively. While discussing his time on the campaign trail, he said he saw officials who, quote, are dealing with issues that the Democrat Party won't touch, like poverty and police brutality.
He also claimed that he and most of the pro-Biden base are mainly motivated to, quote, beat back right-wing extremism, which begs the question, I mean, how much do left-wing politicians really care about you, the people? David, I can just guess your answer.
Is nutty. I mean, let's just start with that. I mean, he is. He's nutty. I mean, he's making Bernie Sanders and AOC out to be mainstream conservatives. I mean, that's how to the left Cornel West is. I mean, let's just be clear about that. Also, here's the other thing. He's polling nationally at about 2%. He'll be the Green Party candidate. The Green Party candidate's already on the ballot in Michigan and Wisconsin. And if he can pull 2%, it has already been proven that will affect Joe Biden and will give the quote election to Trump. In other words, we can get Trump doesn't need Cornel West. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is it's not good news for the Biden folks there that Cornel West is in this race. Let's just be clear. And let's also remember Ralph Nader, who ran in 2000 against Al Gore and George W. Bush, tipped the scales in Florida's favor towards George W. Bush because Al Gore lost Florida by 594 votes and Ralph Nader had 94,000 votes back then. He was the Green Party candidate then. So this type of stuff is Cornel West is a spoiler in all of this. Let's just be clear.
Let's remember too that the left will stop at absolutely nothing, right, to make sure that they get these people out of the race. They'll hack people's emails and tell them what they've got on them and blackmail them to get out of it. They'll threaten lives. We've seen it, right? So I wouldn't put anything past them to try to stop these kinds of candidates. They will threaten them. They will threaten their families. They will threaten their businesses, their children, and all the rest of it. So be ready. Be ready for some fireworks.
I think that's fair, and I think Cornel West is probably jumping in the race because he wants to force the Democrat Party to discuss issues that the party traditionally, as he has said, is shying away from.
Absolutely. Well, up next, we're going to put a smile on your face. Don't go anywhere because America's Sunrise will be right back.
Tired of the same old mass-produced, globalist-supporting tea companies? Artillery Tea Company is the Patriot source of natural premium tea. Visit ArtilleryTCO.com and use promo code RAV for 10% off.
Bum, bum, bum.
All right, welcome back to American Sunrise. David's having a good time jamming over there. I know you may be getting ready to head outside or you're multitasking right now, but just, if you can, stop what you're doing. Take a look at the screen because we want to leave you with a smile on your face. Just take a look at this. So rescuers moved 5,000 pounds of concrete to rescue this cute little meowing kitten from a storm drain. This little nugget went through quite the ordeal after falling down a storm drain near Port Jefferson Station on Long Island, New York.
After someone heard this sweet little kitten from the opening of the storm drain, rescuers were called to the scene. Strong Island Animal Rescue then worked with local police to move a 5,000-pound concrete slab atop the drain that would allow them to reach in and grab the little Mew.
And using large jacks and then a hydraulic rescue tool called the Jaws of Life, of course, most of you know that from car accidents, they were able to reach the young one, some 30 feet down, and then brought up the little beauty. While it's such a great story,
But I want to know if she was adopted.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
I want to know. I'm sure. I'm sure. I bet maybe one of the rescuers actually adopted her.
It is
and
so
if not,
funny.
just write Miranda. She takes all cats.
It's so funny. That's where you immediately went. The journalist in me immediately goes to, okay, how much money did it cost to rescue a kitten? How much public? I'm sorry. That's where the journalist in me immediately goes. How much public resources were invested? That's where my mind goes.
Oh, Terrance. No.
You have to pray for me in the morning.
We are going to pray for you.
I do agree cost matters and things, absolutely, but you look at all the money government wastes, and if you can rescue an innocent little life like that, I just love it. And I bet there are charities that would gladly step up and foot the bill if that were the situation. I help with a lot of those charities here in Palm Beach that I know would gladly come to the rescue if government didn't want to, but they should still make the effort. And then if they want to say, hey, we'd like to submit this bill to a charity, I guarantee you there are people like Miranda and me that would step right up for sure.
Well, here's what I'm going to say. God is watching, right? God will see what you're doing. So you were focused on the cost. You should be focused on what would Jesus do? There you go. I'm
sorry.
He's like, no.
I'm sorry.
No. You know we love you. And
God is watching.
And Gina's giving me a hard time because I have a little kitten. I have 2 cats, just mind you, and I'm a dog person too. Okay, I don't discriminate. But I have a little kitten that has decided to take up residence outside my patio. Yeah. And the other day, my neighbor was like, "What are you gonna do? You have to adopt this kitten." So I'm under a lot of pressure.
You are under a lot of pressure. I have 3 cats that I've adopted, do I have? Well, I kind of technically have 5 cats at the moment. One of them are kind of like grandcats, or I would offer.
David, we've lost David there. He's like, okay, I got it. All right, time to go though. We have some great guests though coming up on American Sunrise that we do want to remind everybody for. The big one, David. Tell us.
Yeah. Jim Jordan, he'll be here. The House Judiciary Chairman will be here on the show tomorrow. Corey Lewandowski will be here. And of course, I don't want to bury the lead. Terrance will be in West Palm Beach. That's the most important thing.
And I'm missing you, sir.
All right, Miranda and I will see you at 4 p.m. You guys go boldly now.
Stay tuned because War Room is next with Steve Bannon. Have a great day.
We demand real oversight against this weaponized government. Just look at the bribery. If tens of millions of dollars flowing from foreign corrupt people into the bank accounts of the Biden family wasn't enough for actual impeachment, why were we even looking? Joe Biden deserves impeachment for converting the vice presidency into an ATM machine for virtually his entire family. We all see it. We all know it. Now, moments ago, Speaker McCarthy endorsed an impeachment inquiry. This is a baby step following weeks of pressure from House conservatives to do more. We must move faster. Now, I will concede that the votes I have called for will likely fail: term limits, balanced budgets, maybe even impeachment. I am prepared for that eventuality because at least if we take votes, the American people get to see who's fighting for them and who's willing to tolerate more corruption and business as usual. Mr. Speaker, dust off our written January agreement. You have a copy. Reflect on the spirit of that agreement and build on the start that we had moments ago. Begin to comply. No continuing resolutions, individual spending bills or bust, votes on balanced budgets and term limits, subpoenas for Hunter Biden and the members of the Biden family who've been grifting off of this country, and the impeachment for Joe Biden that he so richly deserves. Do these things or face a motion to vacate the chair.
I mean, he makes an important point that in addition to what he said there are not the votes to support an impeachment inquiry into President Biden, and yet you continue to push Speaker McCarthy on that. Why is he wrong when I think the numbers are frankly on his side?
Well, let's take the votes. I think that it is an illusion of Washington that you can't put anything on the floor that's not going to pass. I actually think that our representative republic would be more vibrant if we had more votes that were not always just predetermined, right? And so if we put an impeachment inquiry on the floor and it didn't pass, well, then the people who didn't vote for it would have to be responsive to their voters. That's the way this whole thing works. And while Ken Buck and I have strong disagreement on the quality of the evidence against Joe Biden, it's interesting to note he is one of my strongest allies on the spending matter. So we can disagree on impeachment, we can agree on spending. It shows that the issues aren't particularly linked. As to the quality of the evidence, though, I just have to say, I mean, we do have bank records, devices, laptops, travel records, changes in administration policy. Seems like pretty strong evidence to me.
None of which links President Biden to.
Well, it was Joe Biden on the phone.
None of which
he was calling into the meetings. Wait, Abby, are you actually trying to tell your viewers that you don't believe that Joe Biden was involved in Hunter Biden's business deals?
It's not about case. It's not about what I believe. It's about whether there is evidence that President Biden is linked to the misdeeds that might be linked to Hunter Biden. That's the issue. But I want to get back. I do want to. Come on. Wait, hold on. Can you just acknowledge that when he calls into the business deals that he's involved? He calls into the dinners, you don't think that's involvement? First of all, this is not about innuendo. It's not about what I believe. It's a question. Do you have evidence? If you had evidence that Joe Biden was linked to Hunter Biden's business deals in a way that is illegal, we wouldn't be having this conversation. You would probably have the votes for an impeachment inquiry, but you don't. Because of people like Ken Buck and people like Don Bacon and many others in your conference.
Well, I see the evidence differently. I think that that's why we need to have the votes and have the debates and have the hearings. And again, they represent their constituents just like I represent mine. Even in my remarks on the floor today, I disclaim and acknowledge all that you're saying. But when we just bundle it up and act as if this Biden family corruption isn't happening and we're not going to do anything about it, well, then Americans of all stripes start to lose faith in the oversight capabilities of the Congress and really in the impeachment power that gives us the requisite checks and balances that are necessary.
Well, look, I mean, there are a lot of members who worry, and Republicans who worry that by starting an impeachment inquiry to try to find evidence that you probably should have before you start the inquiry, you cheapen the process. Chris Christie said something very similar this week.
Oh, well, Chris Christie, gosh, I stopped taking advice from him when he was recommending Christopher Wray for jobs.
But on the
substance, look, you want to talk about how long we've had the evidence? The FBI had Hunter Biden's laptop since 2019. So this inquiry isn't just going to be into the Bidens and the bad things they've done. It's also going to be in the cover-up, and we do have that evidence. I was deposing Tim Tebow today. Today, I was asking questions about the role of the Foreign Interference Task Force to go and designate any derogatory information about the Bidens as foreign disinformation when that was part of the cover-up.
Let me just move on here because I'm going to reiterate to the audience because we need to be clear. There is not evidence linking President Biden to anything illegal having to do with Hunter Biden. However, I want to ask you about what Congresswoman Nancy Mace.
That's a key. Wait, hold on. You did a key caveat there.
No. It's about. There's no evidence linking President Biden to anything illegal that you are alleging that Hunter Biden did.
Well, getting the Ukrainian prosecutors fired, I think, was pretty wrong.
Nancy Mace says that you and other MAGA members of the Congress are bullying moderates. She considers herself to be a moderate. In effect, by putting a lot of seats, Republican-held seats, in jeopardy next year. Are you concerned about that as you plot this strategy of having countless votes on things that you have just acknowledged in this interview you don't have the votes for?
Yeah, I think we should have countless votes even if we lose. And I don't think that's legislative bullying. I think that's legislating. I actually think that that's what can sand off some of the rough edges of the policy and procedural choices that we have to make to run the country. So if there are members of Congress who think that taking tough votes is bullying, I guess they shouldn't have run for the position. And, you know, here, yeah, there are going to be some people who are going to be in a tough spot, but their constituents deserve to know where they are. And frankly, I just think that that comes with being a member of the United States Congress.
What is the polling show us about how Americans feel about what McCarthy's now launched?
Yeah, so, you know, why is Kevin McCarthy doing what he's doing? It's because he's feeling a lot of pressure from Republican congressmen and the Republican base. So let's start off with the polling, all right? Republican voters who think Joe Biden did something illegal regarding his son's business dealings. This number tells you basically everything that you need to know. The vast majority of Republican voters nationwide believe that Joe Biden did something illegal regarding Hunter Biden's business dealings, and they're putting a lot of pressure on their own congressman. Of course, Kevin McCarthy has a bit of a math problem going on here, right? Because he has a 5-seat majority. So basically, you know, if 5 Republicans go against him, that could be big trouble for him. And remember, there were 20 Republicans who voted against Kevin McCarthy for Speaker. Those are on the right. Those are pressuring him to launch this impeachment inquiry. And then, of course, there's the 18 Republicans who represent districts that Joe Biden won in 2020. So he's feeling this tug from the right, pushing him towards this impeachment inquiry. And then he's feeling that tug from the middle, basically saying, no, we don't.